It's still cold from the fridge. Believe me, you're going to love this. Hello friends, my name is Julie and you're watching Soviet Born, a channel where we tell you the whole truth about the Soviet Union that no one else will tell you. So stay with us, it's going to be very interesting. Every Soviet citizen knew about Fish Day. Thursday was always Fish Day. The workplace cafeterias would organize these special Thursday meals out of genuine concern for workers' health. That's why seafood was incredibly accessible and very affordable. Fish varieties like hake and pollock weren't just available in regular stores. You could find them in every deli and corner shop. These seafood products were within everyone's reach. Of course, today's prices can't compare to what they were back then. The food industry was operating on an enormous scale during those times. Seafood in particular was distributed and readily available everywhere. I remember from my time working in the Soviet Union, we used to sell herring in massive 200-liter barrels. The same went for squid and octopus. Everything was remarkably affordable. I was just a young girl myself when I worked there, only 16 when I started in Soviet trade. Our lunch would typically be a herring, a cup of tea, and a slice of bread. That's all we needed. That's how accessible everything was back then. Now, unfortunately, herring isn't the cheapest product anymore. That's just how things are. I'm going to grab the ingredients now, and together we'll prepare this iconic, most cherished salad from the Soviet Union. Quite an unusual dish in its own right. These are all the ingredients we'll need for our special salad. For the vegetables, beetroot, carrots, and potatoes. They need to be boiled whole and only peeled afterwards before we continue with the next steps. I'll demonstrate everything for you right now. We'll need mild-cured, regular herring, which I'm going to clean and remove all the unnecessary parts, keeping just the fillets. And some chicken eggs that we'll need to boil as well. Then we'll continue assembling our salad, shall we? These days, you can certainly buy everything ready-made at the store, pre-boiled vegetables and cleaned herring fillets. No need to get your hands messy, but personally, I prefer doing everything the traditional way, as I've always done. And to be completely honest, it's more economical this way. So let's keep going with our preparation. All right, I've finished boiling all the vegetables, potatoes, carrots, and beetroot. I've peeled the eggs, and I've cleaned the fish and cut it into these perfect bite-sized pieces. I prepare everything using this glass dish and this essential tool, just a standard grater, which I'm sure everyone has in their kitchen, or this type of serving dish here. Now, let's move this aside. This is my dedicated dish that I use exclusively for herring under shuba. It's reserved just for this dish. Typically, herring under shuba is prepared in large batches. I usually make enough to fill 2 to 3 large serving bowls. It keeps wonderfully, and you can enjoy it for up to 3 days without any problem. Here's my time-saving technique. I take all the vegetables, get my grater ready, and grate everything into separate containers right away. Potatoes in one, beetroot in another, carrots in a third. Then, to streamline the process, I arrange everything on the serving dish just like this. If you're planning to make under shuba in large quantities, this method will make your life much easier. Take a grater and grate as many potatoes as you'd like. I put quite a generous layer of potatoes at the bottom, because this is the layer where we'll put our herring. All right, we've made the first layer. Let's spread it out. I'm doing everything by hand, home style. Just like this, we've spread it out nicely. Take the mayonnaise and add just a light coating, spreading a very thin layer of mayonnaise over the surface. Take a spoon and gently spread it around like this. If you're using traditional salty herring, which tends to be quite well seasoned, you won't need to add any extra salt. Since we already have salt in the mayonnaise, that provides enough seasoning. Now let's move on to our herring. Feel free to add as much herring as suits your taste. If you're a big fan of herring, don't hesitate to add a generous amount. I personally prefer it to be more subtle and balanced. This is exactly the thickness of layer I'm aiming for. Make sure the herring is distributed everywhere, everywhere, everywhere. Now just a touch more, I personally like to add another light layer of grated potatoes on top. Just a small amount. I enjoy when the herring has this gentle potato covering. Just a bit more here. Please excuse my home-style approach to cooking. That's it. That's enough. Now we're going to gently spread this potato layer out. Again, we add a small amount of mayonnaise here. Just a touch. Very little. And carefully spread it out the same way. Just a bit. Don't worry if it shifts a little here and there. The next layer we're adding is our carrots. Take the carrots and grate them directly on top, just like this. To make things easier, you can certainly grate all your vegetables in advance and have them ready to layer as you go along. We're grating our carrots here, and it's looking perfect. I think this whole carrot will be exactly right for creating our next layer. The carrots contribute a delicate sweetness and a subtle tang, but you need to be careful not to use too much. Moderation is key here. I must admit, it feels quite unusual for me to be recording my cooking process on camera. So please be understanding if everything isn't absolutely perfect. And this is how everything's coming along nicely. For our next layer, we're adding the beetroot. We're grating it using the same technique as before. The overall height really depends on your personal preference for the finished dish. If you're looking to create a more substantial salad, you'll want to make each layer a bit thicker. Personally, I prefer my herring under shuba to be more modest in height. Let me explain why. When you take a bite, I'll demonstrate the proper serving method later. You want to experience all the wonderful flavors together in one perfect forkful. As you can see, I've made some small adjustments. As I mentioned, this is all home-style cooking, keeping everything straightforward. My hands have turned red from working with the beetroot. I believe this amount is perfectly sufficient. Now we're adding another layer of mayonnaise on top of the beetroot. At this stage, we can be a bit more generous with the mayonnaise. We're spreading it evenly with a spoon to ensure it penetrates through all the layers. It's transforming into a beautiful herring cake. We're carefully smoothing everything out. Naturally, on professional cooking channels, everything looks absolutely pristine and perfect. I'm showing you the authentic home cooking method. That's the way we do it. Now we've reached the final component, the eggs. We're adding 1 or 2 eggs, once again, according to your preference. For this part, we're switching to the fine grater. We're carefully grating over the entire surface for even coverage. Some people prefer to use just the yolk for decoration, but I particularly enjoy when everything has this light, even dusting. The eggs primarily serve as a beautiful finishing touch. Perfect, we're done here. We're distributing it evenly like this. And there you have our wonderfully unpretentious layered salad. This is our completed herring under shuba. Now it's time to let it rest in the refrigerator so all the flavors can meld together beautifully. Let's see how it turns out, shall we? Herring under shuba isn't merely a beloved staple of Soviet cuisine, it's actually achieved legendary status due to its fascinating revolutionary origins. According to one of the most compelling origin stories, in 1910, a tavern owner named Anastas Bogomilov, who ran establishments in both Moscow and Tver, reached his breaking point. He had grown weary of the daily disturbances and heated arguments in his taverns, where crowds would gather, and fueled by alcohol, their revolutionary fervor would spark intense political debates. In response, he ingeniously decided to create a salad that would help foster a more harmonious atmosphere among his patrons. Thus, the Shuba salad was conceived, with each ingredient carrying deep symbolic meaning. As he explained, the herring represented the working class, the vegetables symbolized the peasants, the vibrant beetroot embodied the red color of the revolutionary flag, and the mayonnaise served as a clever reference to French cuisine, representing the bourgeoisie. Through this thoughtful composition, he aimed to demonstrate how all social classes were interconnected. The name Shuba itself has an intriguing story. While in modern times, we might assume it simply refers to the salad being under a fur coat of vegetables. However, the truth is far more fascinating. Shuba was actually a powerful acronym that stood for To Chauvinism and Decline, Boycott and Anathema in Russian. What an extraordinary piece of culinary history! Who else would share such fascinating historical insights with you? Our pleasure to enlighten you. My salad has been resting in the refrigerator for several hours now. It's perfectly marinated. We'll slice it carefully, just like you would a cake. We'll portion it into several servings straight away. It's served in individual portions. Let's see how it turned out. We'll take a plate and serve it up, carefully lifting it out. This is how it's served in portions. You can enhance the presentation with the fresh herbs, perhaps a wedge of lemon, as we traditionally do with fish dishes. Here's how the layers look in cross-section. The potatoes, beetroot, vegetables, everything's well marinated, perfectly tender, absolutely delicious, and wonderfully moist. All right, let's taste it. Friends, for obvious reasons, we can't post all our videos on YouTube. That's why we make additional content available on our Patreon page. If you're interested in seeing more of our content, please feel free to follow the link in the description below. And if you'd like to support our work, which we genuinely need at this time, we would be immensely grateful. A heartfelt thank you to all our current supporters. Your support means the world to us. We look forward to welcoming you on Patreon. Now let's taste what we've created here. In the comments of my Royal Vatrushka recipe video, which you can find through the link in the description, someone mentioned that I didn't show the layers clearly enough. So I'm showing you the layers now. See, here's the potato, beetroot, and herring. And it all looks quite beautiful and appetizing. Let me explain once more. I specifically prefer this height because, watch as we taste it. Yes, because when you take a bite with your fork, you get the perfect combination of all layers in one mouthful. This way, you can fully experience all the flavors of the salad together. Well then, shall we dive in for a taste? It's perfectly chilled from its time in the refrigerator. I promise you, this is absolutely magnificent. No exaggeration. Once you start enjoying this dish, it's practically impossible to put your fork down. I mean it. It's incredibly tasty. Here's another important tip for you. When preparing this dish, make sure to taste the herring beforehand. If you find that the herring is quite salty, please avoid using salted mayonnaise and don't add any extra salt, because as it sits in the refrigerator and the flavors melt together, the saltiness will naturally balance out perfectly. I want you to understand that this isn't just a salad. It's a proper, substantial, cold main course. It's incredibly flavorful and wonderfully satisfying. You can complement it with a slice of dark rye bread and your favorite hot beverage, whether that's tea or coffee. I'd particularly recommend something sweet to drink. The combination creates, honestly, an absolutely perfect and fulfilling meal experience. Please give this recipe a try and share your thoughts in the comments section below. I read all of your comments. While I may not always have the chance to respond to each one, please know that I read and appreciate them all, so I'm looking forward to your feedback. This has been Julie from the Soviet-born channel.
И до новых встреч!